In the realm of pop culture, there are shining stars, those items which everyone can agree were pretty good, even great. But let's not kid ourselves, quality tends to vary over time. Even when you have the best circumstances, even when your actors aren't drunk, and the director has managed to stay off the pills for most of the morning, sometimes the gods of entertainment look down and say, this just isn't your day. For every Emmy-winning performance, for every thought-provoking plotline, there's always that episode that the fans all know about, the worst one, where the wheels fell off the wagon and the wagon rolled off a cliff in a whirlwind of flame and screaming horses. Who will speak out for the worst? Why me? I'm here to pick up the pieces of those shattered dreams and ask, was it all so bad? If there's anything to be said for those worst moments, I'm here to do it. Welcome to Worst of the Best. Gather yourself into one of my enormous leather armchairs and place a comforting cashmere rug over your lap as I talk to you about Star Trek: The Next Generation. Here is a show that had achieved truly great things. People were once again talking about Star Trek as a current and living franchise. The viewing figures were great, the sales were better, and the money was flowing. But we're not here to look at a series at its best, are we? I could have chosen any number of early episodes as the worst, but I'm not going to do that. You see, until Season 3, where Riker had his beard and things really found their footing, we weren't really seeing the show as it would come to be, only a faltering, hesitant experiment not yet brought to fruition. Oh no, we'll be looking at a late episode, one of the latest, in fact. The actors knew their roles intimately, the director understood exactly what the show was all about. This should have been the best of Trek. And yet. We're looking at Season 7, Episode 14, Sub Rosa, the one with the sex candle. By Season 7 of its run, Star Trek: The Next Generation was facing a few problems. All the low-hanging fruit had been well and truly plucked, and there came the need to reach farther and farther back into the lore to find good stories. Today we wouldn't view this as a problem, but let me take you back for a moment to the 90s. The people signing the checks for this stuff needed a show that was basically the same, episode after episode. The network TV model demanded a show which could be viewed in any order at any time, with established characters who were the same at the end as at the beginning. This means no real character development, no stakes, and that's what was killing the show. By Season 7, they were really just spinning their wheels and seeing what got thrown up out of the muck. To be fair, some genuinely interesting ideas came out of the malaise, just none that would end up really going anywhere. So, Sub Rosa, a Latin term for beneath the rose. In case you were wondering, this comes from ancient times. According to mythology, Cupid gave a rose to Hippocrates, the god of silence, to bind him of speaking upon the affairs of Venus. Therefore, a rose became not only the symbol of love, but also the symbol of keeping quiet about the indiscretion of others, which is definitely an appropriate title for the episode. See, I'm finding good things already. We open on Dr. Crusher delivering a eulogy, and already things aren't looking good. She explains that her beloved Nana provided healing to the community, not just through her healthful tea, but with advice and whatnot. Clearly, this is all bullshit. Dr. Crusher lives on a starship, and we know she can repair collapsed spines and severed limbs. She can even bring back the dead as long as she has the corpse in good time. But yes, healing tea. I'm sure that's just super good, too. The Enterprise has, for some unfathomable reason, arrived at what is basically the Federation colony of Space Scotland, just so Dr. Crusher can attend her grandmother's funeral. And just to be clear, every traditional element of Scottish culture you're about to witness is also bullshit. We are to believe that the beloved departed Nana has provided Dr. Crusher with advice and guidance through the years, which, naturally, she has never elected to mention before. Even Patrick Stewart is looking at the ceremony with an expression of disdain, as if to say, I diverted the flagship of the Federation for this bollocks. People pass by to pay respects at the grave, and she notices one person in particular, mainly because he's the only one to drop a flower on the casket, and also because he makes a point of pausing and looking back sadly, as if to make clear that he has a deep and abiding emotional connection to the departed. Foreshadowing. Immediately afterwards, Dr. Crusher is discussing this with Counselor Troy, and here's something interesting. In this episode, we really get an idea that these women rely upon one another and share regularly. It's about the most character development we'll get, though. Troy suggests that maybe this odd chap with a flower, a camellia, which was Nana's favourite, was a patient. Like what, he came regularly for some healing tea and advice? Oh yes, that broken leg is looking much better. Here's a cup of chamomile, and by the way, you should invest in a diversified portfolio that matches your appetite for risk. Come on! However, we're here to look for the good. Crusher and Troy have a real bond here, where either of them feel comfortable asking for emotional support and advice. And how many female friendships do you get in Star Trek? I don't mean bonds of duty, respect for a superior officer, I mean actual friendship between equals, who can call upon one another for any need. It's a rare thing, and here it is. Captain Picard is being shown around by Mr. Random Alien, who is proud of the Scottishness of the colony. Every building has a cornerstone from Edinburgh, Glasgow, Aberdeen. Yes, many other Scottish places you know of. Honestly, it's like saying, this colony preserves the essence of America. We have stones here from Washington, Jacksonville, Las Vegas. This is not some kind of representative sample. Anyway, in Nana's old stone cottage, Dr. Crusher is showing Troy around, and weirdly picks up a poker, which he just sort of waves vaguely in the fireplace, clearly not knowing how to use it. Is this just crap direction, or a commentary on how these space folk have lost all touch with traditional ways? I mean, it's something, right? Nana had a little iron candle holder thing, which apparently has been in the family for generations. Hearing Crusher attempt a Scottish accent while explaining this is excruciating. She relates how the candle has lit the way for generations, blah blah blah. And Troy is all like, word? And she's all, word. Troy leaves because even she can only put up with so many throw rugs and bunches of dried heather. Now we're introduced to Quint, a bluff Scotsman, or at least the non-union space equivalent, who announces that he looked after Nana's affairs, and that candle ought to be put out. It brings bad luck. So it turns out that the candle is cursed or something. Oh, what a lark. Up on the ship, an analysis of the weather control system shows some unusual readings, and there appears to be a storm forming. That's out of place for this time of year, but surely can't indicate something dreadfully amiss, oh no. You'd think the Space Scottish would be fine with a little rain anyway. After looking through Nana's stuff, Dr. Crusher found a diary detailing a steamy love affair, and in a baffling decision goes to talk to Captain Picard about it. This conversation roughly consists of, my Nana was a total horn dog, 100 years old too. Must have been like the devil's sulphurous coin purse down there. Word? Word. Plus, I think he was at the funeral tossing a flower on the grave. Super handsome tosser, that guy. Oh, word? Word. After this word-mare of a fuck chat, even Picard seems a little nonplussed. What was all that about? Things very quickly take a turn for the odd. Showing a remarkable lack of self-awareness, Dr. Crusher has decided to go full-on fangirl mode for Nana. She already has a vaguely traditional-looking throw rug in her quarters and goes to bed in an old-fashioned lacy nightdress, which I really hope, she didn't snag off the dead woman. She looks like she stepped straight off the cover of a mildly erotic romance novel involving husky stable hands and the buxom menopausal ladies of the manor who love them. She has become, in very short order, an actual mentalist. As she sleeps, however, Nana's traditional candle holder sputters into life, and an invisible force peels back the bedsheets and seems intent on slowly wrenching away the dowdy and discreet nightdress. There's a bit of heavily implied shoulder caressing in that sort of chaste, look how sexy this is without actual boobage, 90s way. The next morning she is off the chain. Dr. Crusher meets up with Troy for a work meeting and immediately dominates the conversation by straight up describing her sex dreams last night. She makes a big point of how well a ghostly presence seemed to understand her personal sex requirements, touching her in exactly the way she prefers. I like to think that her requirements involve being saddled up and ridden like a pony, but that's just me. As completely unhinged a conversation as this is, it does illustrate another little nugget of goodness. Troy is not fazed by any of this, and is completely accepting. In Star Trek, characters will often announce how very liberated they are, how very much beyond the sad sexual hang-ups of our own time. But that's all they'll do, talk about it. We've seen conversations around sex and relationships before, and they tend to be quite dry and clinical on this show. Here we see the writers actually grasp that mango and squeeze it flat for all the juice they can gobble. These two women aren't just comfortable with each other's sexual proclivities, it's perfectly acceptable conversation while, and I can't stress this enough, they are actually at work. Troy's response is a sort of polite, "Well, good for you. Get you some, home buddy." "Oh, I intend to." The doctor is all in. "Oh, word?" "Word." It's weirdly refreshing to see an actual, grown-up, fully self-realized character be so candid about having needs and having them met, and to find acceptance and encouragement from a friend. If you think about it, this is one of the most forward-looking scenes in Trek, at least from a social standpoint. And looking back, it seems remarkably subversive for the time, considering the constraints of network television in the 90s. However, on we must plough, like a hearty ploughman, tilling the soft fecund earth under the reproachful yet hungry gaze of the frustrated wife of Squire William. Oh, how the town shall gossip! But they threw caution to the wind along with their clothes as they trysted in the... Sorry, still thinking about that bodice-demolishing romance novel. Dr. Crusher is down the rabbit hole by this point. She revisits the graveyard, making sure to arrive when the mists are rolling in and the night has cast a velvety shroud. To complete the look, she's taken the time to wear boots, a jerkin, and an actual fucking cape. She looks like a ginger hobbit. However, she's not alone. Ned Quint, the angry, doom-saying Scot from before, is tending to Nana's grave, which is totally a thing normal people do at all hours. Continuing his smashing run at being a normal person, Quint warns her that Nana's house is haunted, and the ghost in question will come back if the candle is lit. Also, all the bad weather recently is the ghost's fault. It's probably responsible for single-use plastics and casual racism, too. A dread warning is given. Don't go back into the house, or you'll end up burying another in this line of fiery, passionate matriarchs. To be fair, it was made clear earlier that Nana was well over 100 when she died. I don't think we really need to look into the supernatural there. She could have tripped on a throw rug and collapsed into dust. A pact with the dark forces was probably the only thing keeping the wizened old bat going, that and a healing bloody tea. The weather is really starting to draw in now, with rain and green lightning. Yes, green. No one comments on this, it's just a thing here. Those unusual readings from before have turned into a major weather event. Adding to her problems, Dr. Crusher returns to Nana's house and discovers that it has been filled with flowers by some intruder while she was away. Nothing says, "I love you," like breaking and entering with horticultural vandalism. It's all very sinister. She sees a man standing behind her in the reflection in a mirror, but when she turns around, no one's there. The sinister tone is undercut somewhat by the way she says, "Come out or I'll call the Enterprise," and it does rather downplay the threat when you remember that her best mates are in orbit with 1,000 nuclear torpedoes and death rays. Her work chums include an invincible super robot and an angry Klingon. Exactly what is this frou-frou flower-finging, phantasmal fancy boy supposed to do about it? The ghostly presence is getting into her head, though, and the Doctor has a bit of a funny turn. It's supposed to seem seductive and hypnotic, but she looks like she's got a bit of a migraine. The ghost reveals that these weren't the harmless sex dreams of a frustrated middle-aged medic. He was actually there in her room, and it looks like he has further randy intentions toward her. In fact, he's very clear that he was getting it on with Nana, and now it's Dr. Crusher's turn. It's like a sushi bar conveyor belt loaded with feisty Scottish matrons. The ghost apparently was a man called Ronan from the 1600s who fell in love with one of her ancestors and basically stayed with the family from then on, passed down through the generations like early onset rheumatism. There's no easy way to say this, but she pretty much has a full-on orgasm right then and there. Remember how I said before that the frank and open discussion of sex is a surprisingly future-forward look for this episode? Well, now we come to the other side of that coin. In the very next scene, Dr. Crusher has returned to the ship and presumably got a very good night's sleep when she's visited again by Counselor Troy, who immediately picks up on the vibe that Dr. Crusher is throwing off. It's that healthy glow a woman has after a night of sex so wrong there's footprints on the ceiling. With barely any prodding at all, Dr. Crusher explains that she has met someone, and not only that, but he's her Nana's lover, Ronan. Troy is all about letting love be love and all that, but at this point even she has a look on her face that's all, bitch please. When someone who used to get it on with Commander William Wear Me Like a Hat and Fetch the Pogo Stick Riker gets you that look, you know you're in troubling waters. Dr. Crusher is so loved up in this moment that she sees literally nothing suspect about getting into a relationship with a man who is 1. The lover of her recently deceased beloved Nana, 2. Either considerably younger or millennia older than her, depending on how you look at it, and 3. An actual mind-controlling orgasm ghost. As far as the Doctor is putting it, she just happens to have met a nice young man. You could put it down to the malign influence of this being, but she really does look delighted in her decisions right now. I guess Mummy really do got to get her something. Being a super groovy space hippie, the most Troy can say about this is, I'm glad for you. Although she does spout a little advice about getting close to someone you share a recent loss with, as there can be an illusion of closeness in that shared experience. Whatever. Dr. Crusher is having none of it, and clearly intends to go right back to riding the greasy love unicycle. We're going to have to give up on there being a logical explanation for all of this, however, as Captain Picard emerges onto the bridge into a knee-deep Scottish fog. Commander Riker has the sheer temerity to suggest that it just rolled in on us. Apparently this is something to do with attempts that are being made to fix the weird weather on the planet below. So, Commander Data heads down there with Chief Engineer LaForge to investigate. And here we see Quint for the third and sadly final time. It looks like he's messing with the systems, ranting something about how he's trying to kill us all. And he might be right, as a random surge of energy blasts him dead. Farewell, Quint. We barely knew ye, and what we did know was that you were a crazed nutcase. Never trust a man with a bad accent and a moustache. Dr. Crusher comes to check over the body and determines that it wasn't a random power thing that killed him, but in fact there is blah blah technobabble present. Basically, whatever is causing all the weirdness going on seems to also have killed Quint. Excusing herself, she heads straight to Nana's cottage to confront Ronan, who she knows has something to do with all of this. I mean, she's effectively hiding evidence in a murder investigation by not speaking out immediately, but that's love for you. And sometimes a girl needs a little cinnamon in her Ovaltine, if you know what I mean. The ghost is pretty forthcoming at this point. Oh yes, Quint was killed, but it's all a big misunderstanding, of course. He appears in solid form, which is apparently taxing on him, but Dr. Crusher is just loving it, fawning all over his poofy shirt and waistcoat. He needs her to light the candle. Apparently it sustains him. It's unclear how that works. I mean, a candle will last a few hours, but he implies it's been lit constantly for centuries. Also, we previously saw the candle light spontaneously, so I guess he can do that if he really wants to. Anyway, he gives her the old, "we'll be together, always" line, which in haunting terms is about as ominous as telling your criminal underlings, "Don't worry, you're going to get what's coming to you" when they demand payment. Back in her quarters, she lights the candle with a neat little candle-lighting laser thingy, and starts rocking on the bed like she's jonesing bad for her next fix. Ronan appears with a pocket full of promises. He's going to be with her. He's going to be part of her. It'll all be great. Then he turns into an energy mist and floats into her. Honestly, at this point in the show, malevolent energy beings have floated into people so often they ought to have a specific procedure for it. At the very least, there should be an energy ghost pamphlet or something. It's not even a rare occurrence. Next thing we know, she's dressed in her frumpiest woolen gown and is getting ready to leave forever. She's apparently moving into Nana's house full time. Captain Picard quite rightly asks her, "What the hell, bro?" No big deal, just getting into the whole weird old lady hermit lifestyle. Oh, word? Word. She's decided to become a healer like Nana, which I'm sure is a step up from doing actual real medicine as a proper doctor, plus all the tea you can handle. Picard decides to ask Counselor Troy what the buggery bollocks has been going on down there, and laughably, Troy replies that the Doctor has been having an intense and intimate affair, that Troy knew she was hiding something, and that she decided to just leave well enough alone. Good one, Counselor. Really shows your value to this mission. Excellent skills at not giving a shit there. Picard nails the issue here, asking if this handsome stranger might be exerting some kind of influence, and Troy literally shrugs and says, yeah, it's possible. Her determination to support her friend has reached the point of negligent dismissal. Troy wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire, just because she respects your need to stay toasty. Alright, it's time to get this nonsense wrapped up with a little actual science and reason. Data walks in and announces that they have detected weird energy coming from the cemetery. There is definitely something untoward going on here, and now they have some evidence. Picard quite rightly decides that Troy is full of shit, and sends his invincible super robot to check out the cemetery while he goes looking for Ronan. And at this point, Troy and her opinions about letting Dr. Crusher just do whatever can go to hell. Time to science this shit up. In the cemetery, Data and LaForge are searching out the weird energy readings and calmly notes that they seem to originate at a point below the surface at about, I don't know, maybe coffin level? Whatever could it mean? In Nana's cottage, Dr. Crusher is wriggling about in a silk nightie, with Ronan whispering sweet nothings about how they are nearly merged. They will be like two candles that come together to form a single light. Does anyone on this show actually understand how candles work? But before things can go too far, Picard walks in. He's gentle about it, but he wants some answers. Who is this Ronan fellow? Why has no one else seen him? The man himself comes down the stairs, corporeal once more, and assures the captain that everything's fine. He's just going to shack up with the daughter of his deceased elderly lover, and can Captain Picard please go away now? At this point, it's remarkable that Picard isn't phasering everyone in the damn room, including himself, just to be sure that image never has to enter anyone's imagination ever again. Data speaks up over the communicator. They've found the source of the energy issues, and surprise, surprise, they need to exhume Nana to sort it all out. Ronan doesn't like the idea at all, but Picard is onto him now. He starts asking questions that frankly have been a long time coming. Who is Ronan? Where did he come from? What ship did he arrive on? Oh yes, it's all unraveling now. Ronan dissolves into mist rather than answer any personal questions, and isn't that just like a man? Picard says it's time to go, but he gets an energy zap for his trouble and is knocked out. Ronan wants to get out of there right now and stop them from digging up Nana, but the doctor refuses, as she needs to treat the unconscious Picard. Why not give him a nice cup of healing tea and maybe some advice? Oh, you'd rather use actual equipment and medical science? Well, suit yourself. Ronan departs for the cemetery, and after making sure Picard is alright, she follows. I would point out, in an earlier line it's mentioned that the cemetery is 17 kilometers from the settlement proper, and she is dressed only in a flimsy silk nightdress at night in the rain, but, oh well, that's romance for you. In the cemetery, Data and LaForge actually beam the coffin straight up out of the ground, which is a neat trick, and open it up to reveal poor dead Nana laying there. And you just know she's going to, leap up and scare everyone. We all know it's coming. Let's just get it over with. They get real close, doing scans and the like, and in a move that surprises literally no one watching, Nana sits bolt upright and starts chucking lightning around, conveniently knocking out LaForge and Data. Time for a confrontation. Dr. Crusher arrives and yells, "You're not Nana," to the animated, lightning-infused zombie, which I feel is somewhat redundant. Nana agrees and drops dead again, and Ronan materializes. Again, he's all big on excuses. He was only trying to defend himself when he killed Quint. He's doing it all out of love, etc., etc. Now Dr. Crusher is starting to get it. He's an energy alien who needs a biological host to maintain his cohesion, and he's been doing the same thing to all of the incredibly gullible women in her family for centuries, all of whom were apparently totally on board with the whole inherit mother's boyfriend thing. Fortunately, she's in her right mind now, and Dr. Crusher phases the candle and leaves him nowhere to go. Oh, but there's one place, he says, presumably referring to her lady garden. Having none of that, Crusher phases the shit out of him, and that's the end of Ronan. Well, all that's left is working out the loose ends. Crusher and Troy have a last little meet-up for drinks, and it's casually explained by the doctor that, somehow, this alien energy being discovered that her family have a biological compatibility with him, so he has just been glomming onto them. She quite calmly muses that she nearly got initiated into a very unusual family tradition. Oh, is that what you call it? The energy ghost gigolo that's been passed down for generations. To be fair, the energy ghost really did make Nana very happy, and presumably did the same for the other members of the family he was boinking. In fact, Dr. Crusher is almost sad to see him go. Well, I'm glad she feels at least some remorse for murdering a sentient being who has been spreading sexy joy to frustrated spinsters for centuries. The end. Well, let's talk about that, shall we? It was a divisive episode at the time, by which I mean it divided the fans into those who were resentful and those who were just baffled. I don't think anyone actually liked this mess, and it is a mess. Once Picard gets involved, the problem is solved in about 10 real-time minutes, and the rest of the episode is just Dr. Crusher being incredibly gullible and dumb, and I mean really dumb. She has treated people before for exposure to alien energy beings. She saw her own son actually become one a few seasons earlier. She knows better than this. And what exactly is Ronan's plan here? He got lucky that Dr. Crusher arrived after Nana died, but what happens down the line when Dr. Crusher herself finally slips this sexy mortal coil? Presumably her son Wesley comes to pay respects at that point, and things really start to get open-minded and liberal. The episode was directed by Jonathan Frakes, and although there's nothing here to show off his usual swaggering style of camera work, it's all very competent. I think the main problem with the episode is how weak soup it all is. There's nothing really to grab onto. Ronan is supposed to be devastatingly appealing, but he's basically just some guy. The planet is supposed to be a recreation of Scotland, which is a weird choice, but we only see the cemetery in Nana's house. What exactly does Scotland look like in the far future? Who knows? We're told everything that's happening, but we never really see it, and so we never really buy it. And in the end, was it all worth it? Well, we're here looking for those glimmers of something good after all. So, the relationship between Crusher and Troy has probably never been as intimately personal as it is here. There are moments when they show a candid ability to talk about sex and relationships that really is something. The fact that Troy's supportive nature eventually turns into an almost abusive willingness to let Crusher throw her life away if that's what she wants is by the by. There is chemistry there, and it's a good thing. If you wanted to point to an example of how friendship in a completely equal and tolerant society looks, where we have all got over our sexual hang-ups and we might feel free to love and be loved as we see fit, then you might well point to this episode. And so with that, our time together this evening must draw to a close. Please, help yourself to a brandy, and there are cigars in the humidor. Do be sure to take a candle to light your way to bed, but, and I mean this in the nicest way, try not to have sex with it. I'm happy to discuss other examples of the worst of the best if you wish to send them to me, but please don't feel any pressure to like or subscribe. I'm not your whore, and I don't need your approval. Thank you for your charming company. Good night.